We are extremely excited to feature and share with you Emily Ladau's Demystifying Disability, What to Know, What to Say, and How to Be an Ally. This book serves as a friendly, practical, and intersectional handbook on the importance of understanding disability as part of the human experience, and how we can better use our actions and voices to advocate for and support the disability community as disabled and non-disabled people alike. Emily is a passionate disability rights activist, writer, storyteller, and digital communications consultant whose career began at the age of 10 when she appeared on several episodes of Sesame Street to educate children about her life with a physical disability. Her writing has been published in outlets including the New York Times, Self, Salon, Vice, the HuffPost, and her first book, Demystifying Disability, was published by 10 Speed Press, an imprint of Penguin Random House, in September 2021. Emily has spoken before numerous audiences, from the U.S. Department of Education to the United Nations. Central to all of her work is a focus on harnessing the power of storytelling as a tool for people to become engaged in disability and social justice issues. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today, Emily. Welcome, Emily.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited, and I love your setup behind you with all the books. It's very much my vibe, so I'm really glad to be with you.
Excellent. So I just have to start off by saying what an amazing book this truly is. Such an easy read. Like when we were navigating through the book, it really does serve as a handbook that anybody can really easily utilize, look through to identify terms, those types of things. So great job on compiling this amazing resource. What motivated you to write this book, and what inspired the title, Emily?
So in terms of the title, that was actually based on the podcast that led to the writing of this book. So I was on a podcast called Call Your Girlfriend with a good friend of mine, Kelly Dawson, who also has a physical disability. And on the podcast, we talked about our experiences as disabled women, and a literary agent listened to the podcast and realized that she had read some of my writing before. And so she reached out to me and said, "Hey, have you thought about writing a book?" And so from there, we began working on this idea of filling the gap that existed for a book that gave you some kind of a grounding framework and principles of disability. And the podcast had been titled Demystifying Disability. And we were thinking about it and we said, who doesn't like a little alliteration? And also that's exactly what I'm setting out to try to do. I don't want disability to be some big, confusing, scary, alienating mystery to people. I want it to be something that we can untangle the complexities of together and that we can understand together. And so writing the book for me was really my way of offering a tool and a resource and a starting point for people who care very much about social justice, about making the world a better place, about being accepting, but maybe just didn't know where to start when it came to disability. And I, of course, always give the caveat, I'm one person. I'm a woman with a physical disability. I am white. And so I can never cover the entirety of the disability experience, nor do I think that I am the expert on disability. That was definitely not the motivation behind writing the book. It was really just one way to offer a guide to people, knowing full well that there's a whole world out there of learning to do.
Thanks, Emily. I do love how you identify that that you're one voice in this voice of many people. And when you spoke about your podcast, that's such an excellent way too to amplify a variety of different voices through that medium. And then having the book to really complement all of that is just excellent. If you could elaborate a little bit on some of the experiences in your life that have really helped you to embrace your disability.
It's definitely been a journey. I was born with my physical disability, and what you can't see in the screen is that I am a wheelchair user. My mother and her younger brother, my uncle, also share the same disability that I do. And so growing up, disability was a part of my life in the sense that I was disabled and I had a couple of people in my life who were disabled, but it wasn't really until I got a little bit older that I started to see more people my age who were also disabled. My parents chose to send me to a mainstream public school, and I was the only visibly physically disabled kid. But then over the summers, I went to summer camp for kids with disabilities. And while I was there, I had the opportunity to see what it meant to be disabled outside of myself and my own experiences. But I was still very uncomfortable with it when I would go back to my mainstream school and again would be the only kid with a disability. But when I was 10, I had the opportunity to appear on several episodes of Sesame Street, and I got to educate kids about my life with a physical disability. And I don't think any 10-year-old really recognizes the power in an opportunity like that. But in hindsight, I realized that that was a springboard for me to further develop a sense of confidence in who I was, to embrace my identity, and to begin to build a platform. But it wasn't some overnight self-acceptance. It was really a continued process that's still very much ongoing today, because we live in a world that still so deeply stigmatizes disability that it's hard to not internalize those messages. But because of Sesame Street, because of having family members with disabilities, and because of meeting other kids with disabilities, I think that I was given the gift of a solid foundation to begin to explore who I was.
That's awesome. I just wanted to ask a question as a follow-up there, because you were speaking to the fact that your mother and your uncle share the same disability that you have. And I watched a wonderful interview that you had with your mother, Ellen, with Judy Human. Judy! She's amazing. And you spoke to the special bond that you have with your mom, but that bond comes with both challenges and blessings through the disability. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And always happy to shout out Judy Human. She's an incredible activist and leader and a mentor and friend of mine. And she gave us the opportunity, my mom and I, to share a little bit about our dynamic. I think that parents and children having the same disability is probably more common than you might think, but because, again, we don't really talk about it very much, it feels like a very rare gift. And a lot of people, when they hear that my mother passed on her disability to me, assume that it's tragic. But I think the complete opposite. I think that it's so wonderful to have this DNA deep bond in this experience, and to have had someone in my life who showed me the ropes with advocacy and who showed me what a future would look like. as a disabled woman. That being said, it's interesting because my mother always jokes, she did advocate fiercely for us, but I was really the one who got involved in disability rights work and dragged her along. I would say a little bit kicking and screaming at first. But for both of us, it's been a journey to reframe how we think about disability and to better understand and accept who we are. And that comes with, a lot of generational differences because she was born well before the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And even though while she was growing up, there was so much going on in terms of disability rights, but it's not like there was the internet to, connect her to people. And it's not like some of this was making the regular nightly news in the same way that other issues were being covered. And so, she didn't have that same level of awareness of community that I have. So it's been a very interesting journey as we've both navigated what it's like to exist as disabled women.
Thank you so much for sharing that in like such an intimate way. And, I think you really spoke to a lot of people who may even be watching this where different types of disabilities are a lot more prevalent even within families than people may recognize. And even within our family, anxiety disorder is a disability that runs through the family, through the generations. Our mother suffers from it, we do, and then we're seeing it kind of popping up with some of our children as well at times. And so, yeah, like early on, definitely not seeing it as a gift, but as we've gotten older and gone through many different life experiences, we've decided to start to see the gifts within that, and some of those being, a strong sense of empathy for others and resiliency and a drive to want to, help others who are struggling through different types of life experiences. And that, can you speak a little bit to some of the gifts that your disability have given you?
Absolutely. And I also always want to make sure that people don't think I'm trying to send the message that disability is always sunshine and roses all the time. It's not easy being a disabled person in a world that is not built for you and is not always accepting of you for who you are. And so when I say that disability has brought gifts into my life, I say so with the caveat that it's also brought a lot of challenges. But in terms of the gifts for me, I think it's been a strong sense of identity and a strong sense of community and history and culture that I would not otherwise have had. It has led me down pathways and towards opportunities that I could not have imagined. And a lot of those opportunities have come only because of other opportunities being blocked off for me because of my disability. And so it's been a matter of constantly rerouting my path and figuring out which direction to take. And I recognize that my disability experience comes with a lot of privilege because of my other identities, because of who I am. I have been able to, again, navigate this world that is not made for me. But I do so with the knowledge that that is not the case for everyone. And so while my disability has been a gift in the sense that it's brought me my, friends and community and career, I do not take that for granted because for so many people, it is the exact opposite. And that being said, sometimes I wish that I could just be put out of business tomorrow, that I could shift to a completely different career because the world would finally be fully accepting and inclusive of all disabled people. But until then, I do in some ways believe that it is a gift that I'm able to do this work every day.
Oh, thank you, Emily. Yes, you mentioned a little bit there about how your disability has kind of, even led into the career that you currently have. And I understand that your original goal after university was to teach English. However, during university, your career goal then switched to advocating for disability rights. How has your passion for teaching carried over to your activism work?
My mother would say that I am just teaching in bigger or smaller or more unconventional classrooms, depending on the day. And I think in many ways that is true. I'm very lucky that I do get to engage with so many groups of people. I do get to teach about my experiences. It's interesting to think about how so much of my life has kind of become teachable moments for other people. And I don't think that anyone should feel obligated to turn their existence into a teachable moment. And there are certainly times when I find it tiring, when, I wish that I could say, oh, I just want to exist in the world. I just want to be in the world. I don't always want to teach. But I also believe that if we want the world to be accessible and inclusive, then in many ways that's a two-way street. And we can share our stories and our experiences to help make the world more accessible. And that's not always the most popular line of thinking, because disabled people, especially multi-marginalized disabled people, are tired. We are tired. It's not easy to exist in this world every day. But for me, teaching and engaging and communicating and storytelling are my passions. And so I am lucky to get to do that in all kinds of conventional and unconventional ways.
Well, thank you, Emily. I'm actually very passionate about storytelling as well. So thank you for mentioning that. Like, I understand this is a shared passion from what you just said there. Just branching off into storytelling a little bit here. How do you use storytelling as a tool for people to become engaged in disability and social justice issues?
I think that storytelling is how we humanize ourselves to one another, how we find common ground among so many moments of division and partisanship and misunderstanding. And when I tell my story, or when I support someone else to tell their story, I find that we can more easily create points of connection with people who might otherwise be unsure or uncertain when it comes to understanding and accepting disability. And in a way, it's frustrating that we are still at a point where we have to humanize ourselves, right? Disability is very much a part of the human experience. It's a natural part of the human experience. And my wish is that we wouldn't have to convince people of our humanity, but rather than convince people, I simply want to meet people where they're at and to let them know that disability is just another part of who I am. It's not something that I'm ashamed of. It's not a negative. It's not a bad word. It's simply what makes me, me. And I think that comes through not just by sharing data and statistics. I can say there are 1.3 billion plus disabled people in the world. We're the world's largest minority, 15% of the global population. I can give you all of those numbers. But when you break those numbers down and you realize that those are 1.3 billion people, each with their own experiences and opinions and stories and overlapping identities, suddenly that's when disability becomes not this abstract concept, but another part of the fabric of the diversity of our world.
Thanks, Emily. It is so important to really have voices amplified in that storytelling piece. And through what you just said there, like being that the activist to really like let people know that it's not just numbers, that it goes deeper than that. With that being said, who are some of the people who have influenced and inspired you to become the amazing disability rights activist that you are today?
First and foremost, my mom, without a doubt. I am very lucky to have had someone who taught me what advocacy looked like and to speak up for myself very fiercely and fearlessly when I need to. Of course, I have to mention again Judy Heumann, who has been an incredible mentor to me. I also find myself wowed every day by the community that has grown online of people with disabilities who are out there doing the work. I learned so much from simply being in community with people and seeing how they share their stories. I'm thinking of Imani Barbarin. I'm thinking of Rebecca Tossig. I'm thinking of Kia Brown, Alice Wong, Ariel Henley, Sandy Ho. I just love that I get to count myself in community with these people and learn from them every day.
Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, definitely sense of community is what will get everybody through and get everybody to a more, I think, equitable place where we're all working together. We see also schools, making attempts to build better communities, better support systems. We also see, different shirt days to help show recognition for, different causes. We have here in Canada, just some of them that I've kind of jotted down here to mention are Red Shirt Day, a day for action for accessibility and inclusion. We have Orange Shirt Day, which falls on the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. We have Pink Shirt Day for anti-bullying. So within the schools, students will wear these shirts and kind of like celebrate awareness for those days. My question is, what other things, so it's nice to have kind of these shirt days to get, students together, but what other things should we be doing other than just throwing on a shirt once a year? You know what I mean? Throwing on a shirt once a year to draw awareness to these different causes.
I'm always a believer that we need to start somewhere. And so conversation starters are great, but what's most important to me is that we don't relegate experiences of disability or chronic illness or any identity really to a day to be aware of it. Because what does awareness really mean? We know that it exists. What do we do about that? What do we do with that awareness? Have we moved on to acceptance? Have we moved on to action? And that comes not just from putting on a shirt and having one conversation, but really weaving experiences into the day-to-day of your curriculum. And growing up, I learned next to nothing about disability because it was not part of any curriculum. It was not part of any lesson plan. And as a matter of fact, anytime disability was discussed in classrooms, on the very rare occasion, it was either because I brought it up or because I was essentially being tokenized. And my greatest wish in looking back on my school experience is that disability history had been included in our history lesson, that I had seen disability representation in the media that we consumed, that disability was acknowledged as part of the human experience rather than as something that we were simply aware of, or something that you considered only when doing a good deed or giving someone special treatment. And so it's not enough to me to have these one-off moments. And I also worry that if teachers do try to foster empathy beyond a day of wearing a shirt, that it may end up looking like a simulation event where you put on a blindfold, or you put in earplugs, or you try out a wheelchair for an hour. And those are meant to be empathy building exercises. But I worry too, again, that's a one-off experience. And if not in an environment where you're engaging with actual disabled people, with actual media created by disabled people, it's very easy to misinterpret the lesson from things like simulation, and to understand it as more of a scary thing, to think, oh, I pity these people, I would never want to have this experience, I should be nicer to them. But that's not it. You can't roll a mile in my chair and better understand my humanity. You have to engage with me as a human to understand my humanity.
Thank you so much. Honestly, I couldn't have said it better myself. Definitely getting, more even books out there into the schools, right? So filling our libraries with more diverse voices, right? Even within the curriculum, in the classroom, integrating it, because growing up, there was definitely a lack of education around, or even community building in our schools, right? What else was I going to say?
Around most social justice issues, really,
yeah. A lack of even focusing on the history that lies there. So definitely, getting more books into the libraries. I've started even donating books to my kids' schools so that they can add them to their libraries, and hopefully promoting them to add more. And I know specifically the school that my boys go to, they're doing an overhaul this year of their library to get rid of some things and add in some more diverse voices there and that. So yeah, hopefully more of a push there through education, and definitely having voices like yours, and we're trying to be better ancestors and good allies to push voices to be heard through that as well. And I just had a final question here for you, Emily. I'm going to hold up your book that we love so much. So how do you hope your book will be used, and what do you hope will be the impact of your book?
Thank you for ending on such a thoughtful question. And for me, the book was never meant to be a textbook, although I have heard that many teachers and professors are using it in their classrooms. It's on their syllabi, and that's very exciting to me. But my goal really is that it becomes a reference on your shelf that you can go to, that you can pick up whenever you have a question about disability. You aren't sure. Oh, go figure. The real life. The phone's ringing. But my hope is that people will be able to take it off their shelves, pick it up if they have a question and they're looking for a safe place to get it answered, whether it's about using certain terminology, whether it's about etiquette or something they just saw in the media and how they should respond to it, whether it's a question of a moment in history, or maybe they're looking for a resource to continue their learning, because learning about disability does not start and end with one book, especially does not start and end with my book, because again, I am a white woman with a physical disability. That's the lens that informs what I write and how I speak and how I communicate. My experiences aren't going to ring true for everybody. And so while I hope that I can provide that jumping off point, And I hope that I'll become a staple on the shelves of people, or not me, but the book will become a staple on the shelves of people who are passionate about social justice issues. I'm not really concerned about me or one book. I'm concerned about a broader movement, and I recognize that I play this tiny, tiny role in it. All I want to do is change one mind at a time, connect with one person at a time, and let them know that there's more learning to be done. So once you've read my book, if you do read my book, great, and thank you for that. But keep going. There's more. There's so much more out there to learn from the disability community. So let it be a start, not an end.
Thank you so much for being here with us today, Emily. We really appreciate you and all that you're doing. You mentioned just then that your voice plays a tiny role in the broader movement, but I want to acknowledge that your voice, has had a huge impact with educating others and moving others towards positive change. We also had the pleasure of interviewing Ariel Henley for her first memoir, A Face for Picasso. So voices like that are absolutely wonderful to help the movement. You've, in your book, listed in the back resources for other people to refer to, books, films, videos, which are also wonderful. So again, thank you so much for being with us today and sharing your voice with us. Yes, thank you so much, Emily.
Thank you. Thank you for amplifying so many different perspectives, for giving me this opportunity and this platform, and for pushing people to keep reading and keep learning.
Oh, thank you so much. If you don't want to miss any of our upcoming videos, make sure that you hit the subscribe button below, as well as the notifications. And you can also visit our website, chaptersforchange.com, for educational resources and to see what we're up to. See you soon.